like insane strategies that you don't, where you like, you would think would just destroy the painting and it would just. Oh man, I can't find it. I think this guy does pretty good, right, chat? This is good, right?
This video is from a little while ago, and it was shot by Jack Brantman.
Oh, this guy's insane. This is crazy.
For here in Chicago, he's got a YouTube channel under Chicago Aussie, and he makes great content, particularly his Remade in Chicago series, which features. My client brought me this painting ostensibly because of the puncture in the lower section of the canvas that occurred during the move. But during the examination, we found that there were several old conservations that had discolored, had worn, and had suffered a little bit over time.
As you know, the in-game sound is very loud, so when I'm going to fight, I can't hear anyone.
Which is
I can't even hear myself.
Cloudy or milky, usually as
I could turn it down, but
we can hear you, bro.
So after diagnosing all those problems, the client agreed that not only
we can hear you.
fix the puncture, but we should take
I know you can hear me, but I can't hear me.
Had the patient on the table, so to speak.
I'll mute up, my
So
bad.
the first step is getting the painting
just let me know when you're in Discord. Just let me know when you're in
In this case,
Diablo.
the artist used nails, so I'm pulling those out, as opposed to using tacks, which is generally more preferred. Once the painting's off the stretcher, and the stretcher's set aside for cleaning later, I can start to remove the grime.
Yo, bro, have you ever tried to restore something yourself, or like
disgusting stuff
like
that builds up?
fix the Game Boy?
Painting.
When you're at this step where you take it off, you're like, wow, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And then it's GG.
On with wax. And luckily, wax is soluble in several solvents and is a pliable material, so it's not terribly difficult to remove, but care is still taken to not subject the original canvas to any unnecessary tension or handling. With the patch removed, the excess wax can then be scraped off. We can begin the process of cleaning the painting.
Can you share it your screen?
Yeah. Should you look at this chat? Is that insane? I'm showing right now. Hold
And
up.
before any cleaning is begun, I make several tests in inconspicuous areas to determine the best materials, detergents, solutions, solvents for the painting that will remove the surface grime and the old varnish.
Wow.
Once that information is gathered, I can begin the process in earnest. So right there I was using a wax paste to remove the built-up surface grime, and once that's gone, I can use solvents to remove the old varnish. And as we start to see the old varnish removed, we can begin to see what the artist originally wanted.
It's kind of crazy though that in the creation of the art itself, it has such a good preservant to it that you can restore it later on.
Yellow varnish. And whenever I move to cleaning a signature, I'll always switch to Q-tips or smaller swabs, just because I want to be a little bit more delicate and have a little bit more control, because of course the signature is very important to the piece. With the painting cleaned, I can move on to a vapor treatment, which is a method using moisture, heat, and pressure that will allow me to relax the canvas and flatten it to remove any waves and ripples and other distortions. And this takes place over a couple of hours, and then the painting will go under weights and acclimatize for a couple of days.
Yeah. You use like pinches with that.
Flat, the canvas is smooth and even, and we can begin with some of the other structural work that needs to be done to repair the tears, punctures, and other damage that the physical canvas has received over time. Now, while there are several methods of repairing tears or punctures to canvas, including patches or linings, I'm choosing something called the bridging technique, which is a little bit lighter weight and less invasive than those other methods. And the bridging technique consists of lots of small fibers cut from Belgian linen, laid perpendicularly across the tear in a bed of adhesive. And this is just meant to hold the canvas flat and together so that it doesn't open up and reveal itself on the face. So once the adhesive is laid down, the
he's doing it backwards,
can be set in the bed of adhesive.
It's on the other side.
Yeah.
And then they'll be pressed as they dry so that there's no distortion to the original canvas. And because the painting
it's not like stitches, because it's opposite. You don't want it to stitch.
In some cases, really small,
because otherwise it'll distort them.
Tacking edge, which is called a strip lining, and that's done by taking a piece of Belgian linen and adhering it to the tacking edge using a conservation adhesive in film form. It's ironed on and then pressed and allowed to cool and dry. And once this is done, there'll be plenty of meat on the tacking edge for the stretching. Now, with the painting flat and on a stiff surface, I can remove any excess wax that has seeped through the crack and found its way to the face of the painting. And once this is done, I can begin the process of preparing the stretcher for the stretching. Now, luckily, in this case, the wooden stretcher was not damaged or broken in any way, shape, or form, but I still need to remove the old wooden keys and any nails or tacks that I might have missed earlier on.
This one just coughed.
I'll clean it up, I'll square it up, and then I'll prepare for the stretching. I prefer to use steel tacks as opposed to copper tacks, which can oxidize, or staples, which are really just inferior, to secure the painting to the stretcher.
Satisfying.
Using a canvas pulling plier will
Yeah.
allow me to apply even tension to the canvas, and I'll use a magnetic hammer to drive the tacks through the canvas into the stretcher support. Now the
Yo, this
keys,
soup cleaning
which
one
you can
is
see me
crazy.
tapping
I
in
think
here,
you'll
are
like it.
used to add
Dink.
tension to the stretcher, which is a non-fixed jointed wooden support. Now sometimes the keys are damaged or they're otherwise missing, and I'll have to recreate them. In this case, I'm using a piece of oak as opposed to a piece of pine, because it's a better material, it's more rigid, and it can handle being tapped in better than the pine. Now once the keys are all secured, I will fix them with a piece of fishing line and a tacks so that they don't get lost in the future. And once all these tacks are secured, I can begin the process of filling in the cracks and tears on the face of the painting so that I can begin the retouching process.
That makes sense, actually.
Now, using a putty, I will overfill the areas where there is missing paint.
Oh, no.
And then once that
Wait a
putty
minute.
is dry, I'll
Trust
come
it?
back with Q-tips and cotton swabs and other tools to remove the excess, because I want to make sure that I have an even, smooth surface onto which I can apply the retouching pigments. With the fill in medium dry, I can apply an isolation
upload.
layer of varnish to the painting. And there are many reasons to do this. Among them is to provide a barrier between my retouching and any future work.
Oh,
and
so you
the
can
original
remove it.
painting. And two, it allows me to see the colors better and see them as they will look once they're final varnished.
39
And this is
months.
important
Love
because
you,
if I retouch
xQc.
according to the washed
Yeah,
out,
that's not how
dried
you do
out
that.
colors, then when I put the final varnish on, the retouching isn't going to match and I'll have to redo it. Now, retouching, unlike painting, requires a different approach both in technique and materials. So instead of using oil paint, I'm using my Mary Restauro, which is a conservation grade paint that has no oil in it. And that's important because oil oxidizes over time and becomes permanent. This pigment will never be permanent. It can always be removed with the appropriate solvent. And as oil oxidizes, it darkens and changes color. Now this paint, because it has no oil, won't change color over time, thus keeping the
Can they
retouching more
recreate
accurate.
aging, though?
The
And
other main difference
scaling
between
it
painting
on
and
purpose?
retouching is that painting, you have the
Oh
my
freedom
God, he
to
started doing
apply
it.
as much pigment as you want. Whereas retouching, we are really just focused on the areas where there are losses. It would be inappropriate to add pigment anywhere where the
Fake
original
cracks,
pigment
though.
is still existing.
Fake.
And so the conservator must limit any pigment that they're applying to just those areas of damage or loss. In this case, just the tears and the cracks. And there's no secret to retouching. It's just a matter of practice and patience. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more you do it, the more quickly you're able to determine how to mix a color based on your
And what the color will look like when
That
it
is,
dries.
you can see all of the colors that make up one color without having to labor to that point. And once the retouching is finished, the varnishing process can begin. In this case, I'm using a synthetic resin, ultraviolet stable, plasticized
Oh, it doesn't change.
varnish designed for conservation. And this varnish
this dead
will
shit
remain
off.
soluble for about 102 years in mild solvents.
I'm enjoying this.
It will
Settle
not
down.
yellow, it will not darken, it will not bloom with exposure to moisture, it will not fail like the old varnishes do. And every once in a while, a little hair gets stuck in the varnish, and so it needs to be removed using a scalpel. With the varnish finally applied, I can put the painting back into the frame, and in this case, instead of using nails or screws, I'm going to be using metal brackets or picture clips because they are easier to install, they provide better support, and they don't damage the original painting at all. So, with the painting fully conserved, damage addressed, cleaned, and put back together in the original frame, all of my work is complete and the painting is ready to go back up on the wall and be enjoyed by my client for many years to come. So thanks for watching this video. A huge thanks to Jack Brantman for spending countless days in my studio shooting and following around. Go ahead and give him a...
Oh, bruh.
You just sent him all your money.
Oh, man, my Bitcoin's all fucking gone. Oh, yes, it was all damaged. Look, it's all damaged. It's like boom, boom.
A huge thanks to Jack Brantman for spending countless days in my studio shooting and following around. Go ahead and
Wait, countless days? That's how much time it takes to do this shit?
Seemed like a lot of work.
Yeah, like, fuck all that shit, bruh.
You gotta think every time he has to let that coat dry and all that, you know?